Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to our second office hours here. I'm just going to give everybody a minute to finish joining because I see people continuing to jump in here. So we'll give just a minute and then we'll get started. I've got a fun demo that I'm kind of proud of to show you here at the beginning. It's a thing that I've been working on. I started working on it last week at the Energy Resources Conference, kind of um, in between sessions, like, well, during sessions, I guess. During sessions, there are fewer people in the expo hall. And so during sessions, I was able to make a little bit of progress on this app. So it's gonna be fun. Um, yeah. Okay. So we'll give everybody just another. I'll let the whole minute go by and then we'll get started. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So Holly is ahead of me here. If you have questions while we're going, drop them in the chat. I got a couple of questions ahead of time that we'll get to. But first I'm going to start with a little demo. I guess before I do that, I'll introduce myself for folks that don't know who I am or are new here to office hours. My name is Christopher Moravec. I'm the CTO for Dymaptic. We're a small custom software development and Esri implementation shop. We do all kinds of things from experience builder configuration to custom experience builder add-ins, to pro add-ins and Esri implementations, and then full custom software development, whether that's a mobile app or a web application. Almost always it involves Esri in some fashion, though, or at least a map. Um, so I started doing these webinars last month. So this is the second one. Um, I'm going to change up the format a little bit as we're experimenting with what works. So this week or this month, I'm going to do a demo for the first part and kind of talk about this little project that I've been working on. And then we'll transition and we'll answer whatever questions are in the chat and questions that people sent in. So that's going to be kind of fun because there were some good questions. Um, okay, so the this little app that I've been I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead probably, but I'm just kind of excited to share this. So one of the things that keeps coming up is using AI to write arcade expressions in ArcGIS. And Arcade, if you're not familiar with ArcGIS, Arcade is a very lightweight scripting language that plugs into ArcGIS all across the platform. So it works in the web, it works in ArcGIS Pro, it works um, on ArcGIS Server, it works all over the place. And there's probably like, I don't know, at least a dozen or maybe more different profiles of Arcade that work in different areas and have different kind of like default variables, like $ feature and things like that. Um, Mostly I do it for things like pop-ups, but I know it gets used a lot. You can even build custom data sources in dashboards, which is one of my favorite uses. It's incredibly powerful. But it is another programming language. It is scarily similar to JavaScript, but it is not JavaScript. It is very functional in its nature. It's not very, its only object orientedness is in storing data, like dictionary access to get an attribute or something like that out of a feature. You can do feature dot attribute name to get the attribute out. Um, so anyway, there's this idea that you can use ChatGPT or Claude or any AI to generate those arcade scripts. And it's pretty good. But the problem is that most of the time when you want an arcade script, you need it to have some more context. You need it to know, like, what are the names of my fields or what are the layers that are available to me? And so the best way to do that is to like go to the REST endpoint and copy and paste the JSON or the HTML and drop it into your chat window. But that's kind of a lot of work. And Esri is also working on some plugins for like the map editor and different things that are going to allow you to use AI to write Arcade across the platform. But I also thought that it might be fun to try building one of these. Now, at Dymaptic, we built a plugin for ArcGIS Pro several years ago now to write Arcade for pop-up expressions. But it was limited to inside ArcGIS Pro, and it couldn't do as many things, and AI was not as sophisticated as it is now. Um, so last week I thought, well, let's just try building this thing. And so in between sessions, and then yesterday in between things, I was working on this app. So you're going to see a demo of a fairly I've only put like maybe 12 or 16 hours into this thing. So, and it is a real AI demo. It is not staged. So I do not know what's going to happen as usual. Um, okay. So we're going to try sharing this here. Make sure this pops up so I can see the chat. Okay. All right. So what we're looking at here is my Arcade AI assistant, and it lists all of my maps. I've already signed in with just a regular old OAuth workflow, and it lists all of my maps. So this is the one thing I have staged because I have customer data and all kinds of things in examples in here when I'm experimenting with things. So I limit it to just one map. That's the only thing that I've done here. So I have this one map. I'm going to click on it here, and what it immediately asks me for is the layer that I'm going to work on. So this is trees, and I'm going to build a pop-up. And actually, I'm just going to give it kind of a generic prompt, and then it's going to think for a minute. And while it thinks, we'll go look at the data. So let's say, make me a nice HTML pop-up with sections and emojis. Be sure to return the full object. I'll explain that in a second. Okay, so we're going to let that run. And while that's running, we're going to go look at the data over here. So I have this map. This is a bunch of trees in the city of Portland where I live. And each one of these trees has some information about it. It has its address, whether or not there are high voltage wires above it, the condition of the tree, the like the diameter of the tree, what neighborhood it's in. It just has a few attributes about that tree. And I can click on these different trees. They're symbolized by their condition. So you can see there's dead ones and there's ones that are poor and all kinds of different things as we click on these. But this pop-up is kind of boring. So let's go see what our AI friend did for us here. Oh no, of course it failed the first time here. Okay, sorry. We'll have to refresh it. Sometimes I haven't figured out how to make sure it always guarantees that it gets the full. Sometimes it just stops. That's what I get for doing a live demo. Let me go back and do trees and pop-ups. Okay. Make a nice short pop-up with HTML sections and emoji. Be sure to oh, I know why it's confused. I told it to return the full object. That it misunderstood that. Okay. So the reason that I put return the full object on there is because one of the things that this bot forgets to do is do the pop-up expression correctly. So if I go over here in my pop-up in the web map and I do arcade, then I need it to return this object, not just a string. If you return the string for this type of pop-up expression, it doesn't work right. So I need it to return this object. So that's what I was trying to tell it to do, but it misinterpreted it as return the full thing. So let's see if this worked. So this looks pretty good. Let's run it and see what it did. Oh, okay. Did a good job. It stuck some emojis in here. It did HTML and it returned the actual full thing. Okay, so let's copy this and let's go see what it looks like in here. Just make sure this actually works. Yeah, okay. So there we go. Okay, so poor condition, and it has the size, species not specified. I think that's a mistake. We'll have it fix that in a second. And yeah, okay. So the interesting thing about species here is species is actually a related table. So it's actually a global ID field. And it's over here in this other table. So if we look at this table, there we go. We look at the table, we can see this is where all the species is. So this is where it's connected. So that's right. We can do that inside a pop-up. Let's see if our chatbot can do it. Decode the species using the related table. Okay, so we'll see if that works. While that's looking, we'll take a quick tour of the code here. So this code is special. I did not write any of it. I coded it all by vibe. I kind of hate that term because by what they mean by vibe is that I told it what I wanted to do. Like I wrote down a scope or a design document. I gave it instructions. And the better instructions you give it, the better it is at generating code. So if I can give it full on like documentation about what I want it to do, like this knowledge markdown file, then it does a very good job of building that application. So coding by vibe is, I mean, that's something that I've been doing basically my whole life. I just never called it that. I just called it writing a scope of work or writing a design document. So it drives me a little bit nuts that we now have coding by vibe. But anyway, so I wrote all of this using CodeBuff, which is a code generation tool that is just a command line here. So inside VS Code, I have CodeBuff running right here in a terminal window. And I basically ask it to do things, it does them, and then updates the files and kind of walks me through what it did. So earlier this morning, I was adding tables in because I wanted to be able to demo the thing that I just showed. So like this morning, it didn't have related tables. It only had layers. So I have CodeBuff here that I've been working with. I have my server running here, and I have a front end React app here. And yeah, there are a bunch of warnings and errors for source maps and things. I have just been ignoring those. Probably CodeBuff is doing a terrible job. If I was actually going to deploy this in the real world, I would definitely work through these and understand why I'm getting why I'm getting warnings on these maps. Um, okay, it looks like this is done. So sorry, I'm keep switching gears, but I'm gonna switch back and let's see what it did here. Okay, so it worked through this. Let's see. Unknown error. Okay, so that happens sometimes because I don't getting the arcade expression editor to run with the right data is actually quite challenging. And it doesn't have a lot of documentation. So there's a lot to work through to get that working. So it does have errors when you start doing complicated things like this. Okay, okay, so it's doing really complicated things here. Let's ask it to do it specifically by name, not by relationship name, but by what's the name of that function. So let's see, feature set by name. So let's just ask it to do it. Related table using feature set by name only. See if that simplifies it a little bit here. It does definitely it definitely got carried away in this case. Um, but it also wrote 100 lines of arcade in less time than it probably takes me to look up the functions to do this in arcade. So I think it is still useful. Okay, so there did an update. So let's see here. This should be okay. So feature set by name, and then it does a filter. Okay, so let's see if this works. Line 38. Oh, data store. Okay, this is actually, this has to be map. We don't have data store in here. Okay, so then find is broken. Okay, I think I know what's happening. So this is one of the problems here is it is not complete enough to make this work every single time. It does take human intervention to get this code cleaned up. So I don't know, maybe that's a pro, maybe that's a con. I actually don't mind this mode of like troubleshooting code like this. So I think this is kind of fun. The part that I don't like is slogging through all these if statements. It feels kind of like boilerplate to me. So, um, but I, so let's just look at this. If we run this in here, okay, invalid parameter, verify test data. Okay, that's actually a really unhelpful error, but I think I know what's happening because I've been messing with this all morning and so I have a sense of what's going on here. So feature set by name requires that this is the name in the map. And I haven't figured this out yet. For some reason, my code thinks that the name has underscores, but when you look at it in the web map, it doesn't. And I'm not sure where those underscores are actually coming from yet. So that's a thing that I have to work out in my app. So that should fix that. So that should make this table work. Um, and then this is a fascinating little trick. So for some reason, in the filter, in the version of the filter function that works against a table, you can do variable substitution with a variable. But I can't get it to work with this $ feature. You can only get it to work with an actual variable. So we can do var species like that, or maybe I should do species ID. So we'll do species ID. And then if I bring this over here and I put it here instead of this at, this probably is going to work. Yeah, it did. Okay. So let's see how that looks here. There we go. All right. So now we have species. And if let's click on some different ones, yeah, that's working pretty well. Okay. So let's do something else interesting. Let's have it decode the condition of the tree. Great. Now oh, wait, I had to make changes. Whoops. Let me go back and grab the code that I did. So here's my working code. I'm gonna drop that. Whoa, there's a weird error. Okay. Drop that in there. Hey, it's beta software. Okay, drop that in there. Could you also decode oh, what was the name of the field? Forgot. Oh, oh, wait, do we already have condition? Am I just, oh, hey, look at that. It has condition. It already, it already had condition and I didn't even notice. So I think it's actually doing what I wanted already. Let's pick a green one and see if it works. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah. So it totally is already doing the condition, which is the thing that I wanted to show. Because what it is able to read for me. It did it with an if statement instead of the map dictionary thing. Uh, so yeah, anyway, it read the domain that's there already, and converted that to some emoji for me. So that was, I don't know, that was kind of fun. I like that it took some initiative and did that for me. Um, so then you can do other fun things here. You can go and we could ask it to add a Wikipedia link using the species name. Um, so that was fun. I did that earlier today, and that worked mostly. I don't know how you got to work out what the Wikipedia search query is. I didn't have time to do that, and Claude doesn't seem to quite know what's going on. Um, okay, but anyway, that's enough demos. Let's see. There's a couple of comments here. Let me see. He's pulling the feature name rather than the name in the map. Oh, that is probably exactly what's happening, Nikki. Thank you. Um, yeah, that's probably exactly what happened. Good point. Pop-ups are brilliant. Yes, yeah. This and labels, right? That's like what you do with Arcade. Which AI model is powering the chat? Good question, Troy. Let's go back and look at this thing for a minute. So there's several things happening here. Um, so I want to look just for a few minutes at the prompt so we can kind of get an idea of what's going on. So it's kind of a big prompt. But let's see here. So we start up here. This needs work, but you get it. We start up here. You're an expert ArcGIS arcade expressions, and your job is to help build them. And then we walk the AI through what we have. So we have map title and number of layers and tables and which layer the user selected. Remember, I went and I selected a layer at the beginning, and then it spits out all of those fields for that layer in detail. Um, and then it gets down here and it spits out all of the other layers and tables so that it has reference to the other layers and tables that are in the map, not just the one that is the primary. That way you can do things like what we did with our table. We can do a join and get that data, or a geometry join or whatever. And then we stick in the current expression so that it always has a reference to the current code, which comes from that editor. And then we pull in relevant arcade documentation. And that's because I have a very basic RAG running in here, which RAG is retrieval augmented generation, which is AI speak for we add some documentation to the AI prompt so that it has relevant information about what it's doing. So if I ask it to use a particular function, or if I ask it to just kind of in general do something, it will search the arcade documentation first, looking for bits of documentation or examples that are relevant to that, and then include those chunks in the prompt. That's what RAG does. I've spent the last several newsletter articles, and almost entirely human, which is my weekly newsletter, talking about RAG, and kind of building up to what RAG is. So there's a bunch of information there if you're interested. But we're pulling in arcade documentation. And you can actually see down here, each time it runs, it's maxing out. I gave it a max of 10, but it's pulling in 10 pieces of documentation. And then I attempt to give it some customized instructions and some guidelines. One of the things that it really struggles with here is accidentally falling into JavaScript mode. And the biggest thing is it falls and does ternary expressions, which is in JavaScript is when you use a question mark to say if this, then do this other thing, use a question mark and then a colon. And but Arcade doesn't support that. So that's the biggest thing that it does. And I'm trying really hard to tell it to do that. Only use Arcade. It does not support ternary operations. It still does it sometimes. Drives me nuts. But if you say no, it doesn't support ternary operations, then it knows exactly what you mean and it fixes it. And usually it goes, sorry for my mistake. Classic AI. Okay, so then all of this gets pushed together, plus my chain of conversation history, and all of that gets sent to Claude 3.7. So Troy, you had asked which AI model is using this. I'm using Claude 3.7. And I'm using the large beta so that it has a huge context window, 128,000 tokens of context. And I have thinking turned on, which is why sometimes it takes a hot minute because it sits there and it will actually spend 60,000 tokens thinking. And when it does, when it's thinking, is it's actually spitting out text and reading it. So it's a kind of thinking out loud, very much like we do as people, and then provides the final result. And that really increases the quality of the result. It still makes mistakes because Arcade is not as well documented on the internet as something like JavaScript. But that's basically how it works. So I'm using Claude 3.7, which is really good at writing code. I've been experimenting with some other models doing code, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I still lean towards Claude almost all the time to do code writing. So before we leave this demo, I want to just show how I got to this point, because it's actually a fairly interesting process. So CodeBuff is great at writing code within an app, but it's not so good at starting an app. I've definitely struggled with CodeBuff starting an application from scratch, like in an empty folder. So instead, what I did is I went to Claude, and I'm using the API console here so that I can control the parameters and do what I want. But I gave it this system prompt. You are an experienced JavaScript developer that builds full stack web applications. You have particular experience in ArcGIS and using the newest ArcGIS SDKs and web applications. Your job is to work with the user to build applications to the best of your ability, following the standards and industry best practices. Blah, blah, blah. Then I described what I wanted. So I described the concept of this application to the AI. And you can see I totally have spelling errors here, and I just didn't even bother fixing them. Um, and I actually did this once during the conference, and then somebody walked up to the booth, and I had to just close my laptop, and I lost it. So I had to anyway. I gave it previous code that it started with, and then if I scroll down, one of the downsides of this is of the API endpoint is it doesn't do code highlighting very well and stuff because it's not for that. If I scroll down here to the output, then you can see it's thinking here where it talks about what it's going to do and how it's going to build it and writing some code and blah, blah, blah. And then it finally spits out the full implementation. And so it built me basically this entire structure right here, which is a client side or a client React app, and then a server side component. And basically, I went through each one of these files. I copied them out of here. I went into VS Code. I made the file. I pasted the content in, and then it didn't quite run. So I started up CodeBuff and started giving it error messages and having it fix the code and work on it. And so the amount of code that I've actually touched myself in here is very small. Mostly it's tweaking this prompt because the AI writing the prompt is, I don't know, it feels sketchy. It doesn't do it the way I want it done. So I've been tweaking the prompt myself, but most of the code it did all by itself. So it was able to build the OAuth workflow and get the login to work. It's able to query my map, query the maps for the user that's logged in and pass the token and get those back and then download the map JSON. It's able to do it wrote code to do all of those things, which previously it hasn't been able to do. The AIs have struggled with the ArcGIS APIs. And so the CodeBuff really did a good job here. Now, I am using CodeBuff in what's called max mode. And in max mode, it uses several different AIs all the time, but max mode in particular uses Google Gemini to do the thinking part and the planning, and then it uses Claude to write the code. the code buff people been sending out marketing emails because of their official launch and stuff, and they claim that that is the most powerful way to use it. It is also the most expensive. But I don't know, I can't quite decide. I think in a bigger application like this, once it got all of these files, I think it did do better. But at the beginning, when it was smaller, I think Claude on its own without the max tag actually did better. So that's it's kind of interesting trade-offs how these models, how their performance varies depending on what you're doing and how much you have. Um, yeah, and I think it's all about filling up that context window because even though Claude in this beta mode that I'm using has this huge context window of 128,000 tokens, its recall is only, I think, yeah, I'm going to get this number wrong, but I think Claude's recall is only like 60%, which means it doesn't remember everything that's in the context. Just like us, right? You read a book and you don't remember every detail about that book. Um, but unlike or very similar to us, when you're prompted about a specific thing in the book, your brain is able to kind of dredge that up out of memory. The AIs are often able to do that as well, which is kind of a weird, scary thing. Um, yeah, so I just wanted to kind of walk through the process of how I built this. I am really curious if folks would find this interesting. Like, should I post the source code for this mess up on GitHub? Like, would people run this, or are people interested in having this tool even as it stands without all of its polish? Um, I don't know if people were interested, maybe we could all maybe would work on it together on GitHub. Maybe other people would like to uh, either write code themselves or spin up their AI of choice and have it work on it. That might be kind of fun to work to see if we how good we can get this thing. So let me know in the chat if you're interested in that. Okay, let's see here. So next up, I've got some questions to go through. So I'm going to turn that off and switch over to the questions that got here earlier. There we go. Okay. I didn't make a screen with these on it, so um yeah. Okay. Let's see if there's any comments. Oh, Trey. Yeah, super interesting. And the models are really great on few shot. If you give an example. Yeah. So that's actually so Troy's comment about doing few shot learning. So that's the idea that you put some examples into the prompt. And I would actually I'd really like to enhance the arcade bot beyond just having the documentation, which helps a lot, to also have example code. So if I had like a repository of example arcade scripts that it could pull from, I think that would help quite a bit because you could have like a default one in there, or you could search across those and find the art, excuse me, the arcade example that is most similar and pull that in. Excuse me. That's what I get for drinking. Um, so I could have it search and pull in an example to pull into the prompt. I think that would help quite a bit. Um, Maybe even just a simple example. Maybe one for each profile. So like one for a pop-up that had the right return, one for a label that had the right return. That actually might help quite a bit. That's a good idea, Troy. Um, so that would be a way to improve this. Those examples would also be a way to fine tune the model, and that would be another way to make Claude even better. Claude through AWS Bedrock, I think is what it's called, does let you fine tune some of their models. Um, so yeah, that would be another way to do it if we had a whole slew of arcade expressions. So maybe if folks have arcade expressions they'd be willing to share, that would be fun. Okay, so a couple of questions that got submitted earlier here. Oh, some of these I have links for, so I guess I will go back and share my screen. Um, turn this back on. Okay. Bring the chat back up. There we go. Okay. So where'd my notes go? There we go. Okay. So the first question was, how hard or easy are the AI functionality in ArcGIS Pro? It's a really good question, and I'm going to assume that what this person meant was the deep learning packages. Um, so in the Living Atlas, when you go to the Living Atlas and you go to browse, there's this filter right here, content type, and you can do deep learning packages. And these are all pre-trained AI models or GeoAI models that Esri provides that you can download and use. Esri actually did a pretty good job of making this fairly straightforward to use. So if you go into one of these items here, they have this link, the Deep Learning Libraries Installer for ArcGIS. So when you go to this takes you to an installer, GitHub repo and installer that Esri provides. You can download it for Pro, for example, right here. And what it does is it installs for you all of the Python packages and background libraries and things that you need in order to run these deep learning packages. So it really gets you started from nothing. Now, you do need, I have run some of these on just CPU machines, but it is much nicer if you have a CUDA compatible NVIDIA graphics card that you can do this on. It doesn't have to be a physical machine. You can do it as a VM. They're just expensive when you do that. So there's definitely, yeah, I wouldn't say it's hard. It's not easy, but everything exists here. You go through, you install this, you get Pro running with that installed, then you can download this package, you pull it up, and then you can run it. Um, when you're dealing with things like imagery, you do have to be able to match almost all of these models that are specific. If they're specific to a type of imagery, then your imagery has to also match. Um, so if you use different resolution or different band imagery, the output may vary. Some of the other ones, like the text SAM or segment anything model, these are a little bit more flexible, and you can basically describe what you want out of it. There's also one. I'm not sure if it's actually a deep learning package or I think it's actually just a toolbox tool in Pro that what it does is chop up your image into little pieces based on some rule or a feature that you provide, and it sends that little tiny bit of aerial imagery to OpenAI and asks OpenAI to review this imagery. So there's a really cool example I think it was at Dev Summit, where Esri they showed doing that with burned buildings in after the wildfires in California. And so they basically used, I think, parcel data to say within this parcel, extract that image and then send that image to OpenAI and tell me what is the percent burned of the building in that image. And it turns out these models are really good at that kind of thing. I think it's near human level accuracy, if not as good as human level accuracy. It doesn't get tired like we do. And so I think that's actually a really powerful use of AI, of these big large language models, image analysis that is way undersold. Um, I suspect there's a lot more we could be doing with the models in that format, um, which is a little bit off topic from the original question, but anyway. So I'd give it a medium on getting these things working. Um, Kind of related to that, the ArcGIS service lifecycle. I'm going to assume that what this person meant was talking about just the life cycle of Esri products. So sorry, we're changing gears here from AI for a moment. Um, so this is the ArcGIS Enterprise Lifecycle document. If you just Google ArcGIS Enterprise Lifecycle, then you get this, and it walks you through all of the different versions and what the important dates are for them. So this is my go-to for that. I will say what's coming is probably more important. There's a really good blog here. Um, drop this blog in the chat also. But this blog that Esri wrote is about the transition of 11.5 to 12. So 11.5 comes out this summer-ish, I think, and then 12 will be later. Yeah, ArcGIS Enterprise Q2 releases. Yeah, so coming soon. Um, 12 is the next big release, and it's changing some stuff. So I think this is a really great blog to kind of do an overview of why they changed the numbering to 12 and kind of what that means, what the upgrade process is, and yeah, what's going on there. The biggest thing I think is 12 does not include Web App Builder, Configurable Apps, and Map Viewer Classic. It only includes their successors, Experience Builder, Instant Apps, and the new Map Viewer. So to go to 12, you're going to have your web app builders converted to experience builders, your configurable apps migrated to instant apps or experience builders, and you won't have access to Map Viewer Classic. But I don't think that Map Viewer Classic is not that big a deal to me. I don't use it anymore. I only use the map viewer. So yeah, that's definitely what I would look at. Okay, so then the next question, back to AI. Should you incorporate ChatGPT into your ArcPy development workflow? My answer, if my answer is always yes. Somebody asked me, should I use AI in my workflow X? My answer is always yes. Um, so so that's the short answer. The way I would do it, let's go over here, look. So the way I would do this, if you're in ChatGPT, ChatGPT is your AI of choice and you're paying for it, which paying for it will get you better access to the better models. My favorite GPT model right now is O3. I think it's the best at the moment. It's not the default most of the time. O4 is usually the default. Um, and the name, okay, so sorry. The naming that OpenAI uses here is totally bonkers. Um, but they're different structures. O3 and O4 are different model structures. It's not that 4 supersedes 3, it's that they actually have different internal structures. Honestly, their marketing department should probably ask their own AI to rename these things, but they didn't ask me for my opinion. So I would use O3 if you're using ChatGPT. And the way I like to format this is step one is tell it what it is. So something like you are a Python developer with experience in ArcPy, right? Doesn't matter when you're typing on a webinar, everything's spelled right. Also, the AI doesn't usually care. And then from here, I would say, I am building, and I would give it some background, some context about what I'm trying to do. If you're just doing something very short, make it short. It doesn't need to be more than a sentence or part of a sentence, even. If you want it to give you working code, then give it something like some layer metadata. So that might be copying and pasting JSON endpoints or whatever. It could even be a screenshot of your web map or of the fields. You can mix and match media types in here. So in ChatGPT, you can add an image and let it use that as reference as well. That can be your metadata. And then make your ask. Write this script or something like that. This is the most common way that I use it. You can definitely also just be like, hey, what's the format for um, a search cursor? And it'll, what's the syntax for a search cursor in ArcPy? And it'll give you that. So if depending on what you're doing, that might also be useful. I tend to just try to have it write the whole thing these days and then tweak it from there and just kind of debug and edit after that. Um, but but also you could just ask it for help. Sometimes I'll have a running chat GPT where it's just my chat GPT that I talk to it about this particular API. So it just has all that context. Um, but eventually the context window gets too big and it forgets things and it becomes less useful. So just kind of be aware of those things and start over when it seems like it's not working the way that you want. Oftentimes, if it's answering poorly, just creating a new chat and starting over is a good way to fix that. Um, Yeah. So the other thing that I've been testing, and I don't know if I like it or not, is I have this other app. Oh, I closed it. I have this other app called Cherry Studio, which is you can hook it up to different AI models using API keys. So I can hook it up to Claude or ChatGPT or whatever. And then I can have conversations with it in an app on my machine. So except for the fact that it is sent to those models to do work and then get the answer back, it is all just saved locally on my machine. So if you want that, and you can set up local RAG repositories where you're pulling in like your own content, your own writing or reference materials. You can set those up all in the Cherry Studio app. I'm not sure if I like it. This is not a like a glowing recommendation. There's several others out there. LibreChat and Open Web UI are the ones that I've used. The reason I like Cherry Studio is it's an app on my computer. I don't have to like start up a Docker container and have all that stuff running because it's a web application. Um, yeah, so it's not, I don't know if it's my favorite, but I definitely use it quite a bit now to talk to Claude. And actually I showed using the Claude console earlier. I don't actually know why I use the Claude console. I normally been using Cherry Studio to do that. Um, So yeah, so that's another thing you can use if you're trying to do something like ArcPy development. You can use an app like Cherry Studio or Open Web UI or LibreChat, and you can switch models. So you can make a request with ChatGPT and it does something like write a plan or something like that, and then you could switch to Claude and have it write the code. And you can just do that right there in the app with a drop down, change it to the different models. So that's actually really useful. It works just like changing ChatGPT models up here. It's just I can change to Claude or other things, and that I find or Gemini, I find that really useful. Um, Another thing, depending on how complex your Python script is, if it's something like writing a whole Python toolbox, one thing that we've started doing at work is using the AI models, and you can even do this with something like CodeBuff, but using the AI models to write a plan for you or write the first draft of the design document and then open that design document and tweak it the way you want. And then you could go build it yourself, or you could pass that whole design document back to the AI model and have it generate it. So that's a common thing that I'll do too. I also, when I was doing this arcade bot, another technique that I used here was generating markdown files of customized documentation. So I would go into like ChatGPT and I would turn on web search or deep research mode, and I would say, write me a document about the arcade code editor in ArcGIS, in the ArcGIS JavaScript API. And then it will go search the internet and it'll pull all the information it can find, not just the documentation, and condense that down into one markdown document that I can feed into my AI as a reference doc. So that's another technique that I use when I'm writing scripts in Python or web applications. Um, yeah, so that's more or less how I do that and what I do for that. Um, okay. And next question is, oh, this is a really good one. This is also a really hard one. A year from now, what tools will the average desktop GIS user need? I'm not usually the person that makes really strong predictions. And I hesitate to make any predictions in AI because it changes every week. But there are some big trends that are happening, and then there's kind of some AI trends that are happening. So if we look at some of the big trends, it's things like cloud native data formats, which have been around. Things like DuckDB and others have been around for a while. They're not brand new. Um, Esri themselves is starting to incorporate those. We're starting to see things like that appear. Um, and I think so. I think that's one pattern is we're going to see more of those types of data formats, cloud native formats, especially for very large data sets that are distributed. So we're going to start to see more of that. We're going to see more integration for ArcGIS users in things like Microsoft Fabric, or that's a fancy name for Spark clusters. Um, Maybe that means there's like some kind of coalescing of data scientist and GIS analyst in some cases where those things are coming together a little bit more. Because when you're talking about, millions or hundreds of millions of records, you don't really do that in Pro. In ArcGIS Pro, you do the first round of that in some kind of big data tool like Fabric or Spark and process that and then take the results down into Pro to do those other, your space-time cubes or your whatever other kinds of analysis. Um, I think there's going to be, yeah. So I think, yeah. So those are kind of the bigger trends that I see at the moment. And then I think there's going to be more AI. So there's going to be more AI tools from Esri, but I think there's going to be more AI tools across the board in GIS apps. We're going to see more things like being able to um, build maps. We're going to see things like being able to write arcade scripts, like I showed you, and we're going to see things like being able to write Python scripts um, built into the tools, as well as more third-party tools that are going to allow those things. So I think we're going to see more deeper integration there, kind of the chatbot for everything business. Um, I think that's going to lead to a lot more automation. Um, I find myself now when I do open ArcGIS Pro, and I don't do very much like pure GIS stuff anymore, but when I do, I find myself jumping straight to like the Python notebook environment in Pro and using AI to write Python snippets, copying, pasting them, tweaking them to run, and building them in that notebook format, like very much like a data science tool. It's more reproducible. I can send it to somebody else. They can see exactly what process I did. It's not just tucked away in the geoprocessing history. So I think we're going to see more and more of that kind of work. Um, yeah, it's the what tools will the average desktop GIS user need? I think it I guess I think it's going to be more about skills than tools. I think it's going to be more like you're going to have to know how to work these AIs. I think that's going to be important. And I think that comes down to learning how to talk to them and communication skills. Like communication skills are not going away. Being able to write and speak to these models, whether you're talking to a model or you're talking to a person, like that process isn't going away. So definitely that. I think there's going to be more variety of tools. I think there's going to be, well, we might see an explosion of tools, kind of this idea of democratizing apps that may happen a bit in GIS where there's more one-off tools or more tools that you build for your own use or for your internal use. So like more customized tools, but they were built more quickly using an AI. So there might be like an explosion of those kind of custom bits. Um, yeah, I don't feel like that's a very good answer. I might have to think on this more and write a whole newsletter on this in the future is like, where do I think this will go? Try to actually condense this into a set of predictions. I don't know. I'm not usually the one that does that, but maybe I'll think about that. Um, yeah, I'd love to hear everybody else's thoughts on that too. I do think that especially with AI, this stuff is changing really fast, and I do think a year from now it will look different. I think it will look different. One of the things I'm most excited to see is actually get large language models into the map generation process. I'm excited to see what that looks like because I think you can build a map very quickly and then dive into the customization and the extension and build it, really work on that symbology and stuff, but you can build a map very quickly using your default colors, your default symbols and things. Um, and I'm kind of excited to see that um, come out of these tools because I think there's going to be a lot of different people working on that, and I think that's going to be cool. Um, yeah, it's not a very good answer to that question, but I think there's going to be there's going to be some fun stuff. Okay, let's see. That was the end of the questions I had ahead of time. Let's see if there's anything else in chat. Okay, I don't see any other questions at the moment. So thank you, everybody, for coming. This was a fun one. If you're interested in having this or using this AI assistant, please let me know because like if people are actually interested in this, then I'll get it into GitHub or I'll do a few more polishing steps and get it up there, or maybe I'll deploy it somewhere. Um, if folks are actually interested in this thing. So yeah, definitely leave me a comment or drop me a note if you're interested in this. Um, we're going to do another one of these webinars in a month or these live streams. Um, so the next one is on June 5th, um, dymaptic.com/events. Um, so don't forget to sign up for that. I'm going to do some other crazy AI thing probably, and then some more questions. Maybe a different demo. We'll see. We'll see. I've got a couple of other AI apps that I'm working on. Um, and yeah, if you want more content and you want to continue to be reminded about this, then please sign up for my newsletter. Um, yeah, ChristopherMoravec.com. If you could post that again, also Holly. I guess you did that once, but maybe again. Okay, good. Some people are totally into the AI assistant. Okay, I'll look at getting that deployed for people to look at. Okay. Thanks everybody for coming. This was fun, and I'll see you all in a month. Thanks.